Tuesday, April 9th. I call to order the Joint Administration and Governmental Affairs and Special Call Committee of the whole meeting for the Birmingham City Council. We have present members, President O'Quinn and Councilor Clinton Woods. Councilors, we will proceed with the agenda as printed, and if you had a chance to read the minutes of our last meeting of Tuesday, January 9th, I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of those minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The minutes of the January 9th meeting are approved. Under old and new business, we do have today on our agenda presentation of the 2024 legislative updated agenda. We'll have our Senior Public Affairs Officer, Mr. Earl Hilliard Jr., will be providing us with an update. As you know from our last meeting, that is the time that we reviewed the priority list of the 2024 legislative agenda. And today, Mr. Hilliard is here to give us an update on the actions taken forth so far in this legislative session. Thank you, Mr. Hilliard.
Good afternoon. Earl Hilliard Jr., Senior Public Affairs Officer for the City of Birmingham Mayor's Office. So I'm back. I had the opportunity.
You said lower the mic. Oh, it's not on. Sorry. There you go.
Are we good? Oh, okay. A few months ago, I had the opportunity to come in front of you and talk to you about this year's session. One of the first things that I mentioned to you was I said that because it's a presidential year, we get caught up in a whole bunch of national politics come local, and it could really change the complexion of a lot of the things we tried to do. We have been playing, it has been a very interesting and exciting, but a really fast-moving year. They went into session February 6th, as you know, but as of today, they're at day 20 of their 30 allotted days. They have been doing what's called 3-day work weeks, which is normally, as I've already stated to here, Tuesday and Thursday are typically your session days, Wednesday your committee days, but what they have been doing was working on Wednesdays also, really speeding the calendar up, which also meant it gives the opportunity for bills to move at a speed they don't normally move at. First thing I want to say is I want to thank you for I think it was February 20th, we had our City of Birmingham mayoral legislative reception with the legislators. I know two of you were able to make it. We truly appreciate it. I'll tell you, the feedback from it was phenomenal, and I was actually asked by multiple legislators to make sure we do that same thing again and nothing else. They wanted to do it just like that. But I think it really did allow for us to spend time with the legislators and really work with them and really talk with them. They tend to like it, and I assume from the feedback I received from you guys that you liked it too. I gave each of y'all homework last time. I don't think it was received well. I said that I really thought that you should follow two bills, a controversial one, and this year you'd had lots of controversial bills or a regular bill, just to kind of walk through the process. I'm sure that you've probably followed bills, although you didn't necessarily come to Montgomery to follow them, just to see the process. But I did want to point out several bills that we have to work on or that happened already and just where we are. The first one was SB 129, which I'm sure you all know about, which was the anti-DEI bill. One of the reasons why there were multiple amendments to it, but one of the reasons why we were concerned is because this bill basically prohibits from maintaining an office that promotes diversity, equity, or inclusion. It prohibited working on any programs or expending funds that worked with or promoted what they consider to be divisive concepts or anything diversity, equity, or inclusion. As you know, we have several departments or divisions in the city of Birmingham that will be directly affected by that. The way that some of the amendments were written and the way our attorneys, Alabama League of Municipalities and several attorneys written, it does not seem to affect a municipal unit. Well, I will tell you this, though, it absolutely affects all boards of education, which means that libraries and schools, partnership programs like that are absolutely affected, and we will have to see the effects of it when it obviously doesn't go into effect until the end of, I think it's October, the beginning of November, and then we'll see like the actual real impact that this bill has. But that one was a huge issue and kind of held the legislature hostage. The next one is SB 51, which was the Monument Protection Bill. Not sure how much you're familiar with that bill, but what it did was it said that, as you know, we had some monument issues a while back. They created a bill that basically put a huge fine every day on a monument if you moved it or obstructed it or whatever. But they also allowed a process that said that you can go through this process to have a monument properly removed or torn down or whatever. Well, this bill came back, and what it does is called the Monument Protection. This is if you remove a monument, if you remove a school, if you remove anything with a name or something, it says that if you destroy it or you get rid of it or whatever, when you create the next thing, you either have to put a memorial to the monument or whatever you put there has to be renamed after whatever was there before. So if you getting rid of it for the name or whatever, then you have to put the name right back. So that bill is right now, it's pending committee. We're hopeful that it doesn't, we have an opportunity to really evaluate that bill a lot longer and that it does not have the opportunity to pass this session. The next one, HB 128, the Historic Property bill. I'm not sure if you heard about this, but we had some concerns with this, although it looks like they'll probably work out some of the concerns. This one would allow what they call a place of worship to be omitted even retroactively from a historic district. That means that a church or a place of worship would not be under any authority under a historic district. So whereas right now you can deem something historic property, you would not be able to do it. The church have the ability, which would have the ability to opt in if they chose to. But even retroactive, that means if a church were considered to be a historic site, it could say they didn't want to be any longer if this passed, and they would no longer be under the obligations or under any restrictions of a historic district. That bill is on the House floor soon. It is passed House committee, and that is HB 128. I have two more. HB 67 was done. Last year we were successful in passing a bill that exempted computer equipment, computer software, and other things from competitive bid process because things we need. Well, someone introduced a bill that would actually delete that exemption, which would put us right back where we are. And that bill is also in House committee coming up. Then obviously, SB 38 is another bill that we're fighting. It is the remove excise taxes from gross receipts, which what that would do is allow corporations and companies to take their taxes off what they consider gross receipts, which would obviously affect business license fees and other things, drastically reducing the money they'll pay the city. And then HB 196, we're still doing more research on this one, but this would allow a land commissioner to avoid the land bank. It would allow them, when the 3-year process, we had it moved from 5 to 3 years, it would allow them after 3 years to then contract with online auctions, immediately contract with online auctions and put those properties in online auction. As you imagine, one of the reasons why the land bank needed to have that 5-year to 3-year so that we could get properties earlier, so we could obviously save the neighborhoods and work on the neighborhoods. Those are the ones that, and I tell you that we've been playing defense all year, because when Alyssa comes up here, when she comes up here and talks about our actual agenda, so much of what I tell you we do, we want to move things forward. And we have a bill that Attorney Stanley will talk about that really talks about some things that y'all really wanted that we might get this time that we feel good about. But we have to spend so much time playing defense, it does affect things. Now, there are just a couple I want to throw out with you, so that you know the budget is going to come up next week probably. This year, record $3.3 billion in the general fund. That's what came out of committee. Possibly Education Trust Fund, $9.3 billion this year. Obviously, records for both of those. There is a bill, HB 182, which would allow for the removal of an unauthorized individual. I know that some of you would be interested in that bill. It will make it easier for you to move. It would make it easier for a person who owned a property to get rid of an unauthorized individual from their property. It would make it a process of a form they'd fill out, and they would submit that to the police, and the form would vouch for them having ownership. The police would verify that ownership, and then within 24 hours, they could have that individual removed. That bill has already passed. That bill has already passed the House and is moving to the Senate. Yeah, it passed the House and moving to the Senate. And then this one you might be concerned about, HB 365. It will require municipal officials to participate and complete a training course upon election, but also every year would require you to have 5 hours of continuing education training. I want to hear from you guys what you think about that. Obviously, the Alabama League of Municipalities would be the one tasked with doing those trainings, so they're very much in support of it. We were thinking about, if we did not oppose it, we were thinking about adding adding an amendment to it that would allow for any of the other conferences that you already go to and get training from, that count. Because right now it states that you have to get the training from the Alabama League of Municipalities in Montgomery. Well, we're saying that when you go to these conferences, I know Councilor O'Quinn, President O'Quinn, you already do training when you go to these conferences. Sometimes your staff do. I know others of you do too. We're trying to just get an amendment that would allow that to count toward that. And I think that's it. There's one more. SB 1 passed. I told you about this one. This is the ballot bill. This is the one that makes it illegal for someone to pay someone to do their ballot for them, or to pay for gathering or culling of ballots. That absolutely affects us because, as you know, we have municipal elections and there are people who all the time pay people to support those efforts, and that would be illegal under most circumstances. Representative Danny Garrett has HB 348, which is a train stop penalty bill. This would say that if it is not a mechanical error, if it's a mechanical issue where they can't, if the train is going to be stopped for, I think it's greater than an hour or greater than 2 hours, it must be broken up, and it cannot, otherwise there are not criminal penalties, but there are monetary penalties, but it makes it law that they have to break it up if it is not. I believe that is the last one. It is, and so at this point, I would like to call up, I will say this, because I had several questions. The gambling bill, separate bills, have passed the House and passed the Senate. They are both in a conference committee right now to see if they can come with any agreement. I will tell you this, the House and Senate versions are completely different. So
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard, for bringing this group of bills to us. I know these weren't necessarily on our list of our agenda, but these have great impact to
Absolutely.
us as a municipality. So if you would allow me, I'd just like to see if any of the councilors have any questions regarding any of these bills that you've just mentioned and any follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Dr. Quinn?
Yes, so HB 128, the historic property bill,
yes,
where is that currently? Is it,
on the House floor. So it is passed the House committee, and it should hit the House floor this week
okay,
to be voted on the House. It has not hit the Senate yet.
so does it only apply to certain types of property or certain types of historic districts? Because let me tell you why. I mean, the city of Birmingham has various kinds of historic districts. And, you know, even at the neighborhood level, like a local historic designation, there's, you know, some design, you know, in some of those neighborhoods, there's some design requirements. A local historic committee that approves requests for, you know, putting an addition on the house or, you know, a roof or something like that. Would it impact those types of situations?
It would.
as well?
Right now, the way the bill is written, anything that had a designation of a historic district or historic area or historic region, a place of worship would be omitted or would be exempt from that unless they opted in.
But it's tailored specifically to places of worship.
It specifically says places of worship would be exempt. Which, as you know, because in a
That's
place like
interesting.
Birmingham, we have lots of,
Right.
we got storefronts, we got houses, we've got a lot of different things, yes.
So
And
what's
what
the background on that? What church is causing a problem for somebody?
Well, I have no idea, but what I'll do is, I know there are amendments already in that bill, the amendments already. The question is, I don't know that this bill passes this time. As I told you, it's on the House floor, but I think there's enough of an issue with people wondering, like how do you can anybody declare themselves a house of worship? Because in Birmingham, we have lots of places that
Right.
we call houses of worship, but, but we also have the slippery slope of defining what qualifies as a house of worship. So I think that may help the build up, but,
Yeah. Then the other comment I had on the requiring continuing education for elected officials, I think for us, a lot of us participate in ALM already. So, just by virtue of going to events, we're getting some continuing education credits. Most of the ALM events offer those. It's a pretty simple process, to make sure that you get credited for those. I would think that it would be a bigger challenge from some of the smaller municipalities where, the council people in particular are essentially volunteers. They have no travel budget whatsoever. So what I'm saying is, from standpoint of City of Birmingham, I don't think it's a challenge, but statewide, it's probably going to face some resistance.
they added in the bill that the way it's written, it says that the municipality can pay for it for the counselors. I'm sure they probably added that in that situation where they're volunteer municipal officials. So, because this also includes the mayor. It includes the mayor also and the other municipal officials.
That's interesting.
And if you look at the bill, if you decide to look at the bill, you can see the courses they say are necessary. Because they have specific courses that they think people who are mayors and councilmen need as
Yeah.
part of their training.
It's probably a good idea.
Yes, thank you. Councilor Woods, a question? Well, I do have a question. I just wanted to go back to SB 129.
Okay.
And I know that one passed, correct?
Yes.
And there was some concern at one time that this may have placed some limitations on Panhellenic organizations that may be on a college campus. Do you know if there were any amendments that were put forth that talked about that or addressed that?
They placed amendments in there that would exempt sporting
Okay.
Dorms and other things, because part of the bill said that you could not segregate by race, gender, all those things. But they exempted, I think, Greek organizations. I think it was Christian specific
Okay.
organizations, and then they exempted athletics from
Perfect.
those gender specific things.
I just wondered if there was a coach that we will not name that was very vocal about that, so maybe that's what brought some of those amendments in there. Very good. And the last one, I just wanted to piggyback on Councilor O'Quinn's comment about HB 365 and the continuing education credits. I can see how a Class 1 municipality such as ours, as well as the budget that we have, this also would also put a hardship on a smaller city that doesn't have quite the budget for training and other things that would be. But I do think it's something that's really valuable to put those continuing education credits in there, because I know most school boards have those from the State School Board Association, and it was just something that was, required or accepted. But I'm hopeful that they can find different things, because we have different avenues that we could get continuing education courses, but it's because most of us either travel or parts of groups like National League of Cities and NCRC, where we could capture some of those continuing education credits. So this would be interesting to see. And I apologize, I didn't capture. Where is this as far as being passed as in committee, or it's just out there?
This one is, I think this one's is going to the House floor.
Okay, House floor.
I think this one's going to the House floor. Oh, I'm sorry, in-house committee. It is in the House committee.
Committee, okay. Thank you very much.
Question.
Yes, go ahead, Dr. O'Quinn.
So I believe it was 2015, 2016, where the state legislature enacted training requirements for school boards. So, looking back at that, think that was within a certain time frame after they got installed into office, that they had to complete that required training. So it makes sense. It would be, in line with something along those lines.
It's 10 hours.
Yeah.
It's 10 hours once you win. And then after you win, every year there's a continuing education requirement of 5 hours.
What would be nice is if they would require, some degree of training before people qualified to run for office. That might cut out some of the nonsense. So.
Well, I do know at one time there was an organization, BBA actually offered courses or offered a series of weekly classes, and it was called If You're Interested in Running for an Office, and it taught some of those principles and things we talk about, parliamentary procedure, ethics, those type things. And then the goal was you would go through this training and then you determine, is this something I want to undertake as part of, preparing or going out for a political office. So I could see how it could be beneficial, as you said, even prior to, or was it you earlier said, prior to taking office, that you get some of these courses.
Yeah, so they're working on ways in which to enhance our elected officials, some voluntary, some required. So.
Well, I liked it as when I served on the school board, we came under those requirements for the 10, and then you had to get so many more after you served. And it was on the onus of the school system to provide that training for them. So we actually would sit and have training that would often be led either by the school board attorney or the Alabama School Association of School Boards. So that training is out there. So I think it would be helpful to current serving municipalities and those type offices. All right, if you'll continue now, we're going to focus on our Birmingham priorities.
And as I get ready to call up our newest member of Government Affairs, Alyssa Thomas, I am going to call up Attorney James Stanley also. As I call them up, I'd like to say I did not mention statewide they've been, as I'm sure you've seen at L.com, they've been assaulting libraries. Libraries and librarians. Not only do they pass the bill, they can now recall library board members. So those members can now be recalled. Not only have they done that, they are now going to make it, well, they have a bill that if it passes, it could criminalize and make it criminal for librarians to have certain content in their library. And they may not even have the knowingly in the bill. So we still have to stay vigilant and really watch for that, because as we have people that represent and work for the city, we have to make sure we protect them and their daily life. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. And just for the record, if you just state your name and your title so that we can get that in our minutes. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Alyssa Thomas, and I serve as Program Manager in the Governmental Affairs Division of the Mayor's Office. For our first two items on the agenda, I'd like to have Attorney Stanley speak.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Stanley from the Office of the City Attorney. I'm an Assistant City Attorney. The two bills I was going to discuss briefly are the Alabama Land Bank legislation and the Code Enforcement lien foreclosure. The Land Bank bill was pre-filed as SB 3. Senator Coleman Madison was the sponsor of that. We got some comments from the Association of County Commissioners early on, and we've had some back and forth with them trying to resolve those. We're not in an impasse, but we're at a point in the session where we're not sure if the bill's going to advance this year or not. One wild card in all this, there was a U.S. Supreme Court case last year that impacted tax sales that came out of Minnesota, but it will have some impact in Alabama, and there is a bill that's been introduced in the House to address that. That bill, if it passes in its form now, will have a few changes to the land bank legislation, which was drafted well in advance of that. So, one question is, do we just wait and see what happens with that bill, knowing we're going to have to adjust either way, or do we proceed? And we're kind of deferring to the senators' judgment on how that proceeds. SB 9 is the code enforcement lien foreclosure legislation, which we think will be really effective in helping us deal with properties, especially a lot of the properties that come back to you over and over again for first for demolitions, then for a series of weed abatements. And there's really not a way to move those properties from the lien status. There's not an effective way to foreclose those assessment liens. This bill would create that process so that what comes out of the foreclosure sale is clear title, which would make these properties attractive to be put back on the market, back to productive use. So we think that would be a really good opportunity for the city. The bill passed the Senate last week. The Realtors Association offered 2 amendments. One was really some minor wording changes that I didn't think were really necessary, but they were also really weren't harmful either. The other one was they asked that a provision in our legislation be deleted. The provision would preclude somebody who had an interest in the property at the time it was foreclosed, or preclude somebody who had outstanding code enforcement liens against their property from being a purchaser at the sale. The concept behind that is if you have an interest in the property, you've got an opportunity. You've had several opportunities to pay off the lien. And we don't want to basically reward people who have not, met their responsibilities by letting them now come in and pay what they owed at the foreclosure sale, but also get clear title. The foreclosure will wipe out any other liens on the property. So you could be on a property with mortgages and other liens. You're not paying anything, and then when we foreclose, come in at the sale, pay the one assessment, and you get clear title. That seems like an unfair windfall. We believe we can actually address that when we do an ordinance without having to have it in legislation. So Senator Coleman Madison, in consultation with us, agreed to make that concession to get it through the Senate. And again, we feel like we've got an option to address that issue anyway.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the attorney?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So item 3 on the agenda is the automated photographic traffic enforcement system. At this time, the city has met with our sponsor, and we're formulating a best way to move forward with that legislation. With the vacant property registration bill, it is a local bill, so it was advertised as required for the time frame. It has been submitted to by our lobbyists to LSA, so we should be expecting a final bill any day now. And that is the same for the Birmingham Housing Trust Fund. It also was advertised as required since it is a local bill, and it should be hopefully returned soon. With the Community Land Trust Act, at this time, there is a summary and talking points created, but the final draft is still pending. So if there were any questions you all had about that, our lobbyists are capable of sitting down and walking through that with you. You can see that the Pardons and Parole Housing Fund, unfortunately, that proposal was rejected. And as far as the Workforce Housing Tax Credit, we actually have Mr. Kelvin Datcher to speak to that. That's okay?
Thank you. Mr. Datcher?
You gonna play his theme music as he comes?
Good morning, Council. Kelvin Datcher, Deputy Director of Community Development. SB 233, sponsored by Senator Linda Coleman Madison. It has made it out of the County and Municipal Government Committee, and we're hoping to get it to the floor. It would provide about $28 million to the Alabama Housing Trust Fund that could be used as gap financing for affordable housing developments. So it would be something that we don't have, and it's been really a huge barrier to getting some affordable housing developments done in the city, across the state rather, and with us as well. Many other neighboring cities, states, Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, they all have this kind of funding. There's a much, much larger than ours, but hopefully if we're able to get something like this, even at the tune of $28 million, we were hopeful that that would do kind of like the historic tax credits did 5 or 6 years ago when they were just so well received that additional funding was made available when that came up for renewal. So again, that's Senator Coleman Madison, and it has come out of committee. And the Low Income Housing Coalition of Alabama has sent out a kind of an action alert for folks to reach out and engage their legislators to try to get that to the floor.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions regarding any of the additional items that have been presented to us from our priority list? Dr. Quinn?
Yes, I have just a general question. So it's my understanding that with 5 days remaining in the session, that's sort of like the cutoff period for introduction of any, new legislation. So if it hasn't made it to the floor by that 5-day mark, kind of all hope is lost for this year.
Typically, I don't know if you guys look at the Jones Group and the way they do their Nexus report and the other reports, they send you 3 different reports, but one of them has a calendar at the bottom of it. It's usually day 28. It's usually kind of day 28. It's not quite the 5-day. That is kind of one of the roughly. It's also according to whether or not the budget is passed or not. Because once again, last week was the first week that they went back to 2-day sessions. So they're extending again. I'm assuming that's to wait on the budget to get here. But if the budget's passed really quickly, then sometimes they'll burn days and they'll do amazing things to get rid of days. You really don't know. The 5-day mark is probably a good general overview, but the 28th day is kind of the last. And what they'll do is they'll break the rules, or they'll break the unofficial rules if there's something they still need to pass.
Okay. So with only just a few days left, technically, there's still some hope.
Yeah, we have, so as I told you, basically today, specifically they're in session now, we're at day 20 of 30. So there are 10 days left. So in other words, like SB 9, which is past the Senate and is going to the House now. Obviously, anything in the second House has a great opportunity as long as it doesn't get sent back for some strange reason. If it's still in the House committee, it has a possibility if it passes out, if they do a 2-day work week this week, if it passes out this week or Tuesday of next week, it still has a real chance. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we have to just hope for all kinds of miracles and blessings.
Okay. Any update on, I think it's SB 91, Senator Smitherman's bill that would put a $5 surcharge on vehicle registrations that would fund a public transportation trust fund?
I have no update on that one. Matter of fact, I'll take a note on that one because that's actually not on my list. Okay. So SB 91.
I believe that's it. Yeah.
Okay. I'll look at that one, and it would add 5. Yeah.
So yeah, this is the follow-up to his legislation that he introduced. I think it was maybe 2018. Creating the state trust fund for public transportation, but didn't fund it, and so this is his, solution to actually putting some money in that account. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it's SB 91.
I'll look at that now. I'll send you guys an email update to that.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Quinn. Any questions, Councilor Woods?
No questions, but we'll just welcome you to the team, and going forward, make sure you give us the good news and let Earl give us the bad news. But thank you.
Well, I do want to thank you for both of you for providing us and everyone that brought us this information. This has been, with this particular legislative agenda and our priority list, you've helped to really assist us and make this a worthwhile effort for us. So I thank you for the work that your team does and the follow-up that we get, as well as from the Jones Group and the people that are representing us there in Montgomery. So kudos to all members of the team.
We truly appreciate that, and I don't want to, by any means, they didn't come up here, but I don't want to any means leave out Camila Gray Lewis, who is the Director of Governmental Affairs, and Ryan Jackson, who is the Deputy Director of Governmental Affairs, and their work on this too. I will say this, and I always remind you guys, but I just want to make sure, If you have any questions, you don't have to wait. You can always text me or call me or ask me about any of the legislation. Once again, if you do want to go to Montgomery, just give us a call. We can line you up with one of the lobbyists, or I'll probably be there, and we can make sure that any thoughts you have or anything you want to check out or evaluate, we can make sure that it happens. But we're glad to have your help, assistance, and all of the work you do in helping us make sure the legislative agenda goes through successfully.
Thank you, Dr. Quinn.
One final question, on the squatters bill, the 182, HB 182, I'm just wondering, you gotta think about unintended consequences, or at least you're supposed to think about unintended consequences. And, Alabama is already a very strong, property owners' rights state, and the Alabama Landlord Tenant Act gives property owners a lot of leeway with tenants, especially. I'm curious if this bill might have some impact on evictions in particular. I mean, it kind of sounds like that's what it's geared for, but in this case, it's intended for people to move people along who don't have explicit permission to be on the property. But thinking about unintended consequences, could it impact the evictions process for tenants that are under contract? I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, an interesting note is that the League of Municipalities put out, the league encourages members to review the bill as substituted and provide feedback, because it works in two different ways. One, it works on houses that are unoccupied, and for houses that are occupied, it actually revises what they call burglary class 3. It actually adds burglary class 3. So in other words, it adds several other things to it. So the bill was initially created, one of the unofficial names, like the Vagrant Removal Act. So one of the things was, I know the intent initially was when vagrants move into buildings and there's a long process to get them out, this was meant to simplify the process for moving individuals who had no business being in there. But I could see they did add a part in there, which is part of the substitution, which I have to go back and look at all of it. I know there is a part about occupied buildings, and that's probably part of the parts you're talking about with evictions.
Thank you. This time, we don't have any other items on our agenda. I want to thank you again for bringing this update. Perhaps at the end of the session, we'll come back and we'll just do a recap, and then we can look forward to where we are for the next session. Any thoughts on any type of calling any special sessions? Any thoughts that you think may occur with that down the road?
I don't think right now no one's talked about a special session. I will tell you that in both of the versions of the bills for the budget, there are money for prisons. If they pass that and there's something they need to do to direct that, there's a possibility. But right now, I haven't been told about any need for a special session.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We do appreciate you again. All right, councilors, at this time, we've come to the end of our agenda. I will be happy to entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.